Welcome to Tiny Show and Tell Us, the bonus series where you write in with your favorite science news or factoid, and we read your email aloud and then dive deeper. I'm Deboki Chakravarti, and I'm here with my co-host, Sam Jones.
Last time we talked about diamond rain on Saturn, or maybe not having diamond rain on Saturn, and UV rays breaking down dyes in plastic. A reminder that we are always looking for you to write to us to be featured in one of these episodes. You can email tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. All right, let's hop into it. I will go first this time.
Yeah.
So mine is very fun.
I'm excited.
It's from listener Tom, who wrote in saying, "Hi, Tiny Matters. I recently learned that birds are fascinating breathers. It takes 2 breath cycles for the air to leave their bodies, and while it travels within their bodies, it's stored in various sacs, some of which are in their butts. Air passes unidirectionally over the lung, which ensures it's always fresh and full of oxygen. Mammalian lungs, on the other hand, never expel all of the stale air inside. Thank you for being an awesome podcast." Thank you, Tom, for listening and for writing in.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think, Deboki, that my beat is officially butts, poop, and infectious disease.
Perfect.
Which I'm pretty pleased about. I'm not embarrassed. Okay, so I want to start with mammal versus bird lungs because I actually didn't realize how different they really are.
Yeah.
So in mammals, like us, the air sacs are inside the lungs. And so air gets into the lungs when our diaphragm moves up and down, right? Like when we're taking a breath, our diaphragm moves, air flows into our lungs. But in birds, the lungs are stationary. Which,
What?
Like, it's so weird to think about breathing without a diaphragm, kind of doing this like up and down thing. They do have muscles that attach to their rib cage and sternum that allow their chest to expand and contract, but it's very different than having like a diaphragm, right?
Yeah.
And then birds, like Tom mentioned, they have these air sacs. So they have 9 air sacs located outside of the lungs that work with their lungs, allowing them to breathe.
Okay.
So like Tom mentioned, some of those are in the butt area. 2, actually. 2 of the 9.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we breathe, or how mammals breathe versus how birds breathe. Tian found an awesome GIF illustration of this that we'll have listed in the references at the bottom of the episode transcript if you want to check it out after the episode. Like, it shows how the air travels in a bird versus a person, and then actually a grasshopper, which is so fascinating. Cool. It was like insect breathing too. It's great. So I'm going to link to it for sure. But essentially, when mammals breathe, air moves bidirectionally. It moves in and out. But with birds, the air moves unidirectionally, like Tom mentioned. Tian said, imagine it as like a hiking loop instead of hiking in and then hiking out.
Okay, so you mean like when we breathe, like it goes in and out of our mouth, but with birds, it like goes in one end, out the other?
No, it doesn't go in one and out the other.
Okay.
It's a little confusing. So like unidirectional means it's circling through and coming back out the nose. And I'll talk about how it actually travels.
Okay.
But the difference is with us, it's like we breathe it in, it goes down, and then it comes back out. Whereas with birds, it's like this longer process. If you think about it, it's like taking a hike and going straight in and straight out versus doing a loop all the way around to get back to the beginning and hitting different structures. As opposed to just like, I'm hitting this structure on the way down, I'm hitting this structure on the way out. So
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. As I continue, I'm hoping that it makes more sense. So, but again, the GIF is so helpful.
Yeah.
So with this unidirectional respiratory system in birds, gases are exchanged between the lungs and the blood in what are called parabronchi, whereas in mammals that happens in little sacs called the alveoli, which are like a dead end. Like you hit a cul-de-sac, essentially. Gas exchange stops there.
Okay.
When a bird breathes, air will travel from the nostrils down the trachea into a series of posterior air sacs that are located in the thorax. And so then when the bird exhales, the air doesn't leave, but it moves into the lungs, where oxygen is absorbed and carbon dioxide is expelled. But then the bird has to take a second inhale that makes the air from the lungs travel down to those anterior air sacs, aka the butt sacs. And then there's another exhalation and stale air leaves through the nostrils. So like the original air that came in actually takes 2 breaths to kind of circle all the way around and come out.
Wow.
Yeah. Every breath a bird takes requires 2 breathing cycles to complete a single breath. what this means is because the air is moving unidirectionally, it's not this thing where it's like, okay, we're breathing it in, it's filling our lungs, it's hitting those alveoli, that's a dead end. And then we're like breathing out, but really we just need to get more fresh air in. In birds, the air that's reaching the lungs is always going to be fresh and full of oxygen. Like stuff is really coming in and then getting cleared out, which sounds nice.
You gave such a good description of it, and it's still so hard to process because I can only think about breathing. It's like so ingrained in us how we breathe. It's hard to like place our version of breathing onto what birds are doing.
Right, because to us, we're like, so you're just bringing in oxygen. It's moving through. You have to bring in more oxygen to get the first bit of oxygen all the way through. But they just keep bringing in fresh air. And we don't have this really smart system to bring in fresh air and really get rid of all that extra stale air, essentially.
Right.
That's like got CO2 and stuff in it. Like we can breathe out, but it's not as efficient and it's not unidirectional in that way. It's really bi-directional as opposed to like a circle. Yeah. Birds are working in a circle and we're working in a straight line down and back up.
Yeah.
So what is the benefit of this other than being like, my lungs have this really fresh air all the time?
Yeah.
So one cool example is that for some bird species, for instance, the bar-headed goose, they can reach super high altitudes. So this goose can easily fly over the summit of Mount Everest without any problems. But for us, trying to breathe in air at 29,000 feet above sea level, where the atmosphere is very thin, is really difficult. And then not being able to expel all that stale air during exhalation contributes to that. So yeah, if only we had air sacs in our butts.
Yeah, if only.
That could solve all of our problems. Yeah. So I just thought that was really cool that these like air sacs outside of the lungs are working to move air around so that the lungs are getting this fresh air all the time. Whereas for us, the air sacs are in the lungs. It's all just mixing together and we're not getting the same. We're not getting this like pristine air that birds are getting.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Sorry, I got distracted by looking up the pronunciation.
It's hard to grasp, but I think that like the GIF that I linked to, I think will be really helpful in just getting that visual of what does it mean to have unidirectional airflow versus bidirectional.
Yeah.
Because I had trouble wrapping my brain around that as well.
Totally. Yeah. Okay, well, Sam, I'm here with something a little less lighthearted, but also very important. So this is from listener R. Yamar. And they wrote in saying, one striking fact about food waste is that nearly 1/3 of all food produced globally, about 1.3 billion tons, ends up being wasted each year. This not only squanders valuable resources like water and labor, but also contributes to approximately 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Reducing food waste could be a powerful way to combat climate change, save money, and feed more people around the world. So yeah, those are huge numbers, and we just wanted to double check them and see like what other context there is. So according to the UN's World Food Program, which is using the UN EP Food Waste Index report from 2024 for its source, it's around 1/5 of the food made for human consumption is lost or wasted globally.
That is so like disheartening.
Yeah, that's less than 1/3, but it's still a lot.
Food waste drives me nuts. I have so much. I try to be really good, and like when I go grocery shopping or like if I go out to eat, I am always taking leftovers. I'm not, even if I don't want the leftovers, I will take them and somehow find a way to eat them or integrate them into some other food because it drives me, like people just tossing half a meal. It really bothers me.
Totally. And so even though like 1/5 is less than 1/3, that's still equivalent to around 1 billion meals every day. I will say, though, that regarding that 1/3 number, the USDA estimates that in the US, it is around 30 to 40% of our food supply that ends up being waste. So
that's so gross. Also, it's like the US is known for having these massive portions and people just like buying so much food and then
just going to waste. It's really...
Sorry, this is me just eye rolling the whole time at the state of things. Anyways, sorry, Deboki.
Yeah, no worries. And so there's some more kind of numbers to go along with the UN's World Food Program reported. They reported that the total cost of that food is estimated to be around $1 trillion. Food loss and waste makes up for around 10% of global greenhouse emissions, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. That's about 5 times more than the emissions compared to like aviation, which is crazy. Like we think of flying as such a big source
We
of
really
emissions.
don't talk about food. Like we talk about
No.
planes, we talk about, I mean, all of these things are problems, right?
Yeah, and so around 60% of food waste is happening at that household level, which is a lot. But then you also think about like, wow, that means like also a lot of food waste is not happening at that household level. So I don't know if that's referring at the industrial level, agriculture, restaurants, I assume.
Yeah.
And this is understandable. There's more food waste in hotter countries because it's, it's harder to store
Totally.
food and
Stuff
transport
goes
it
bad.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So how does this connect to greenhouse gas emissions? This was interesting. It wasn't something that I thought about, but like it makes total sense. The part of it that I feel like I immediately like, yes, this makes sense. It's just when you are wasting food, you're wasting all of the work that went into the food, which, our listener wrote in saying as well, like food is an enormous production. You have to like produce the harvest, you have to do the harvest, you have to make whatever you're making, store it, move it around. Like there is a lot that's going into it. So when food is wasted, all of that work and energy and resources that went into it, unfortunately, is wasted as well. Also, though, this was the thing that I didn't really think about as much. When you have food sitting around in a landfill, you have organic waste that's just decaying, and that leads to the release of methane. So according to the EPA, municipal solid waste landfills are the third biggest human-related source of methane emissions in the US. And while food waste makes up around 24% of that solid waste, it's estimated that around 58% of the methane emissions that get released to the atmosphere from landfills comes from that food waste.
Wow.
Because the food, it can decay super fast compared to other things that end up in the landfill. So for more context, the EPA also says that the food waste in the US causes the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions as 50 million gas-powered cars, which is crazy.
Like in a year-ish. Like in a year.
Yeah, in a year. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
So what can we do about it? I think, there's multiple levels of this, like there are with every version of anything related to trying to improve the climate. Obviously, on the consumer end, one of the things we can do is kind of like you were talking about, trying to shop better, trying to be smarter about how we use our food, all of those things. Some of the things that people are exploring on the manufacturing end is improved development or storage methods. Also, another interesting facet of it is also things that retailers can be doing better in terms of how they stock and handle food. Some places are exploring removing best before dates on fruits and veggies because
they do feel excessive sometimes where I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And I get like really anxious about it. I'm kind of like, yeah, I think that would help me too.
Right.
To
like how many times has there been like lettuce or something that says best by this date? I open it. I'm like, it smells fine. It looks fine. And then I'm like,
yeah,
especially right now because I'm pregnant. I'm like, well, I don't want to get sick. Like, I'm sure it would be fine.
Yeah. And so a lot of us are throwing away food under those conditions when they might still be edible. So those are some of the things. But then also on top of that, when it comes to having excess food, sometimes you end up with edible food and those can be donated to hunger relief organizations. Also, inedible food can be turned into things like animal feed or compost. So there are also options for when you do have food waste to try to deal with it. But I think like everything else, the main goal should be for all of us to work on reducing our waste because recycling is like the secondary thing. Like the first thing is reducing our consumption to begin with.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to Boki. It's an important topic that I think obviously we don't talk about enough.
For sure. Yeah, I think thinking of those numbers was just crazy. Like, because you kind of imagine, right, of course, food waste is like a big waste. Like, it's in the name. Food is such a part of our lives all the time. You just kind of know that it has to be a big deal. But seeing those numbers laid out was pretty wild to me.
Thank you to R. Yagmar and Tom for submitting to Tiny Show and Tell Us, a bonus episode from Tiny Matters created by the American Chemical Society and produced by Multitude. And a big thank you to science journalist Tien Nguyen, who did the research for this episode.
You can send us an email to be featured in a future Tiny Show and Tell Us episode at tinymatters@acs.org, or you can fill out the form that's linked in the episode description. We'll see you next time.